Missy, thank you very, very much, and thank you for your work on AC 21. You've been a very valuable member to that conversation that is important for agriculture generally. And congratulations to all who are here today. The report that was just issued, I think, reaffirms what you all know and appreciate, which is that organic is seeing a successful expansion in the U.S. and around the globe. In fact, since we established some regulations that establish the brand of organic, we've seen a threefold increase in organic production and sales in this country. We now have over 22,000 certified operators, and we had set as a goal reaching 22,000 certified operators by 2018. Well, the last time I checked, it's 2016, which indicates that we're ahead of schedule. $43 billion industry in 2015 domestically, and $80 billion industry worldwide. And what is most startling about this industry is it continues to grow at a phenomenal rate of 15% annually. I am sure that there are most industries in the United States and around the world that would love to have a 15% annual growth rate. So congratulations. But with this comes some challenges. And I'm here today to talk a little bit about those challenges and what we are doing at USDA to try to help us move forward. This is now I would say, a mature industry. It was maturing for a number of years. I think it's now a mature industry, and the question is, what do we do now? Where do we go from here? And I think we're already beginning to see the impact of a maturing industry in terms of supply. The reality is that there's a great demand for organic, and the candid acknowledgement is that we're not necessarily growing as much as we need here to meet this growing demand. What can we do about that? Well, at USDA, one thing we can do, and have done, is continue to negotiate with other countries that are producing organic product to make sure that we streamline the process so that we're in a position to obtain supplies through trade. And we have had equivalency agreements during this administration that have been reached with Japan and South Korea, the EU, Canada, and Switzerland, and we're working with Mexico to try to see if we can potentially expand that opportunity in Mexico. Recently, I had the opportunity, and I think a lot of folks with the Organic Trade Association and industry had a chance to go down to Cuba. And I think there is a tremendous opportunity here for us to use food in the way I believe it should be used, as a unifying industry. We obviously for 60 years have tried an approach with Cuba to sort of isolate it. And I think it's fair to say that didn't work very well for 60 years. President Obama has been very clear about the need for us to reintegrate Cuba into our world. He has traveled down there. I was privileged to be with him when he did. And I think for us to be able to establish a relationship with our Cuban counterparts, it's going to be necessary for it to be a two-way relationship. And I think there's no question that American agriculture can supply and ought to supply and should supply and hopefully will supply in the near future a lot of the base commodities that the Cuban people need to feed themselves. But they also have the opportunity, given the nature of the land mass in Cuba and given the nature of farming as it is in Cuba, to begin being a major supplier of organic. I will be traveling to Puerto Rico next week, and I have invited the Cuban agriculture minister to accompany me to Puerto Rico. First and foremost, to see our climate change work there, to understand better the Caribbean challenges as a result of a changing climate. We will then travel together to Iowa, where he'll have an opportunity to see the broad array of American agriculture, including a visit to an organic farm. And so he can see the possibilities for his country that in turn can potentially be a supplier of organic to American consumers. That's one of the, I think, most important things we can do as we help this industry continue to mature. We obviously will continue to use the resources at USDA to strengthen the partnership between USDA and the organic industry. And I'm proud of the work that we've done in risk management. We have seen, I think, a sea change in attitude about risk management. It's no longer just for commodity production. The whole farm policy was our first effort to try to reach out to smaller producers to provide them the same risk management access that large-scale agriculture has and production agriculture has, commercial-sized agriculture has. Since 2011, we've seen 53 organic price election options created for crops so that it provided more protection and appropriate protection. Now 73 crops under the organic banner now have the contract price addendum that is available that will allow folks to actually cover the actual risk that they suffer if Mother Nature doesn't cooperate in terms of the high value-added proposition that organic is. And I'm really excited about what we announced in February of this year because I think this is an important component of a mature industry, and that is our transitional crop insurance option. And I think this is the next big issue that we must confront. It is very difficult to ask a producer in the United States to essentially say for 3 years, I'm going to convert to become an organic producer, and during that 3-year period, I'm really not going to have an opportunity to do much with my land. I'm going to have to convert it. I'm going to have to transition it. I may not have the income that I have produced in the past from it. And I think it is important for us to work collaboratively together to create a transition system that allows that transition to be more economically feasible, which I think will probably encourage more producers to think about making that transition. But absent a transition plan, I think it becomes extremely difficult. Again, remember, we've got 22,000 certified operators today. We're providing risk management coverage to a little over 1 million acres. About 1% of all the land mass dedicated to agriculture in the U.S. is dedicated to organic. So there is a ways to go here, and there is an opportunity, I think, but we're going to have to work pretty hard to make sure that we've got a transition system that works. Pleased with the fact that we're beginning to see more connection with organic producers and our NRCS, our conservation efforts. Over 6,800 operations have now used EQIP funding, about $115 million, and we obviously will continue to look for ways to make that partnership between NRCS, conservation practices, and organic. Excited about the new Organic Farming Handbook that has been published that gives us a better sense of how we might better integrate our conservation programs. We even have figured out a way to set a goal for ourselves with our CRP program, our Conservation Reserve Program that's operated through the FSA. Set a goal of 20,000 acres committed to buffer strips in organic production as a way of further integration. And now, you know, as we look at the cost share program, I think it's important for us to look for ways in which we can better integrate organic producers into all of our FSA programs. We have a microloan program. We have a series of operation and ownership loans that could be more readily available to organic producers. They may not feel as comfortable as a conventional farmer may going into that county office. So we have to figure out creative ways to open up that door so that producers can come in and understand that they are welcome and that we're excited to do business for them and with them. This microloan program has been quite successful. We launched it a couple of years ago. We've had over 20,000 microloans. This is a loan program that provides up to $50,000 of credit. It's a 7-year loan. The interest rate is very, very, very low. And the paperwork that's associated with this loan is really minimal compared to a general traditional FSA loan. So we've really tried to streamline this, make it available for smaller sized operators to be able to access our FSA programs. We want folks coming through the door. And NASS just launched its 4th annual survey, so we'll have a better understanding of exactly where the industry is, and we'll update those surveys, obviously, from time to time. Our Organic Research and Extension Initiative continues to make investments. We just recently announced another availability of $21.5 million for research projects. That brings to a total during this administration of about $220 million committed to research. And you may ask the question, it's great that a administration has done this, but what about the future administrations? And I think it is important to note that you know, we have had over 30,000 career people at USDA trained and educated in precisely what organic is and what it means. And we've had over 30,000 of our folks trained not just in the basics, but really getting down into the weeds, if you will, on all of this, so that they understand the significant and importance of organic as it relates to future USDA. If you want to know more about what we're doing, you can take a look at our website, usda.gov/organic, and you'll see a lot of the information that I've outlined and more. A couple other things that I want to talk about. Missy mentioned the livestock and poultry rule. Missy, I wish it were over. It's not. It's not over until it's over in this town, and it's certainly not over until the budget is completed and we know precisely what Congress is directing us to do or not do through budget riders. There has been division within the organic family about this rule, but we think we have listened carefully to the industry. We think we have listened carefully to the science behind this, and we're going to continue to make sure that we educate members of Congress about why this rule is important to proceed. I think it's an important part of that maturing process that I talked about. We're also going to continue to work to make sure that we find additional ways to provide help and assistance. This is an incredibly important industry from my perspective in terms of rebuilding the rural economy. It fits into an overarching effort that we have had in revitalizing a rural economy, which we think is pretty important to the country. It does not distinguish in this process between organic and other forms of agricultural production. It recognizes the important role that agriculture plays in rural America. It recognizes the important historic role of trade and the need for us to continue to figure out ways in which we can expand trading opportunities. The President has talked a lot about the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and I will tell you that I understand there are a lot of folks who have concerns about this trade agreement, but the reality is that we see an incredibly growing middle class in Asia, a middle class that is really interested in purchasing American products. I was in Vietnam recently at a grocery store. They can't keep U.S. brand agricultural products on the shelf. It just sells out. Asia today is 525 million middle-class consumers. It is projected to grow in the next 15 years by 2.7 billion middle-class consumers. That's not the total population growth. That's middle-class consumers who want high-value and agricultural products. That means that that part of the world will have over 3 billion middle-class consumers, 10 times the size of the United States. And so the question is, why wouldn't we want to do business with those folks? Why would we only simply want to do business with the 5% of the population of the world that lives in the United States? Doesn't it make sense to also make the pitch to the other 95%? And so we're going to continue to press the importance of trade. We're going to continue to look at that as a critical component of revitalizing, rebuilding a rural economy, but we have to do more. We have to also recognize, as great as exports are, it is also important for us to try to figure out ways in which we can keep that agricultural dollar that's produced in a community in the community. And that's why there has been a major emphasis in this administration on local and regional food systems. You know, we've made literally hundreds of investments, created the microloan program, provided our NRCS efforts with extending growing seasons with tunnel houses that are financed by NRCS. We've looked at ways to create more market opportunities by expanding farmers markets and food hubs and our farm to school program. We have created directories so that folks know where the markets are. We've provided more pricing information so that local and regional folks can better price their product more consistent with the market. We now have what we refer to as value chain coordinators, a great partnership between private foundations and USDA. Have funded a 3-year effort at making sure that we have in every region of the country a value chain coordinator that understands where the local and regional producers are and where their customers are and can be, and helping to make that connection and making it more seamless and more efficient. So we're excited about that. We're excited about conservation, not just for the sake of better soil and water, as important as that is, but also as an economic driver in rural areas, as a response and a way in which we in agriculture in rural America can help our country reduce its greenhouse gas emissions by using conservation, the sequester capacity of soil, to help regulated industries that have a responsibility of lowering their emissions to do it through soil conservation, through farming practices as opposed to building scrubbing towers and things of that nature. We think there is a terrific opportunity, and we're already seeing hundreds of millions of dollars being invested in these ecosystem markets. It may be a habitat market, it may be a water market, it may be a soil conservation market. Just recently, we awarded a substantial amount of resource to a ranch in North Dakota that's working with Chevrolet as part of their social responsibility effort to a voluntary carbon market, utilizing that working ranch as a way of Chevrolet satisfying its social responsibility. And then finally, the bio-based economy, which is an opportunity for us to move away from a fossil fuel-based economy to one that is more plant-based, more bio-based. We see now literally hundreds of projects and products that are now being able to be produced from the waste product that is produced in farming so that we better replicate nature, trying to figure out how we can convert waste into something valuable. All of this ties into the study that you all just listened to about hotspots. We obviously want to expand those hotspots. We want to make sure that we continue to see what we've seen the last couple of years, which is unemployment coming down in rural areas, poverty coming down in rural areas. There's still a lot of work to do, but I think we're on the right track, and I think you all are intricately important and part of this. I'm going to anticipate one of the questions, so I'll just answer it right now. I'm sure there are going to be a few. My good friend Scott, where are you? Yeah, there he is. Scott and I have spent a lot of time together in my office discussing the issue of labeling. I'm not sure who's more frustrated, Scott or me. Well, I don't know. I think I'm pretty close, Scott. Pretty close. Look, this is part of that maturing process. Part of folks getting to know each other. Part of understanding the evolution of what's taking place. And change and evolution is never easy. It's always messy. And I think it's fair to say this whole labeling discussion has been a bit messy. Here's my take on it. I don't think there's any question that we're going to have labeling. Pretty confident about that because we have one state that's passed labeling legislation and we have other states that have considered it and other states that likely will consider it in the future. So even if Congress does absolutely nothing, we have, in essence, a de facto labeling system in the country. We now have industries and businesses and companies that are making the decision on their own. The problem with all of that is that there's no consistency, there's no predictability, there's no stability. The consumer can be easily confused because everybody might do it slightly differently, and there's no standard. So that's why it's important, and I think extremely important for Congress, regardless of the Vermont law, that as part of helping this industry and agriculture generally coexist, that they need to take action. They need to establish, my view, a mandatory system, one that's flexible, has options, and one that is timely, one that provides some time for the communication that needs to take place in this process so that consumers are fully aware of where and how they can get the information they seek. And I'm hopeful at the end of the day that Congress chooses not to allow confusion and instability in a market that is growing and expanding. I'm hopeful that Senator Stabenow, Senator Roberts, and others can see the light and allow some process by which my department is engaged in helping to make, with a collaborative effort, these important decisions so that we have consistency, we have the ability to continue to accelerate the evolution that's taking place. And I hope that as part of this conversation, we have what I saw in my office. When Scott and others from the organic side and some folks from the production agriculture side sat in a room, just like Missy and the AC21 folks do, sit in a room and have a conversation and figure out how to figure this out. Because at the end of the day, consumers want choice, consumers want information, consumers want affordability, And it's our responsibility collectively to try to provide that. And I think it's USDA's responsibility to assist in the providing of that. So if Congress can't or won't make tough decisions, I have told both Senator Roberts and Senator Stabenow, I'm happy to make them. But we just need to make them. And I hope that you all agree with that it's time for action. And it's, we've thought about this and debated it and had conversations about it, but it's time to move on to action, to give consumers a process by which they can get the information, get in a way that is most acceptable to them, and doing it in a way that provides us enough time to educate consumers about precisely where to look, how to look, what to call, what to look at, so that those consumers are very interested in this, get the information they want. I think if we have that industry, or I think we have that solution, two things are going to happen. One, there's going to be greater opportunity, obviously, for organic, but there's also going to be, I think, greater confidence. And I'll finish with this, greater confidence in agriculture generally in this country. And I believe there should be. The farmers that I know, the farmers I talk to, regardless of what method they use, they're just good people. They're caring people. They think they're doing a good job. They think they're doing the right thing. They want to do the right thing. They think they are helping feed the world, and they're proud of that. They're proud of the fact that they are committed to this country and to a value system. They care about the land. They care about the water. These are the people I know. And there's not much difference between the organic folks I talk to and the GMO folks I talk to in terms of what they care about and who they care about. So I'm hopeful that this department has brought folks together. I hope that we have a collaborative effort here. And I hope that agriculture provides an example to the rest of the country, that you can have differences of opinion, but it doesn't prevent you from finding the solution and the answer, from moving forward. I think we've had enough conflict in this country. I think we've had enough arguments and disagreements and language that is not acceptable. You wouldn't want your kids to be talking this way. I think we've had enough of that. And I think agriculture can provide an example to the rest of the country, and I'm going to try in the remaining months I have on this job to facilitate that. So with that, I'll be glad to take any questions that you all might have. So how are we doing this? This man raised his hand right away. Wants that microphone. Oh, wait a minute. Well, we got two guys.
Secretary, thank you for your support for organic agriculture in this administration. Question I have, if you look at this report, you look at the data, there's a tremendous opportunity for farmers in the middle of the country where we farm. My wife and I have a farm in Montana, and yet look at these maps from the report, that's a big white area, which means not a lot of organic activity. I would like to see, just as one example, and I look for you to have more ideas than I do, but whenever a young person goes to the beginning farmer loan programs, there should be an explicit display there of the opportunity that organic is, because it is the way you can start to farm and make money and buy a farm and make a living doing it. And I don't believe that happens without the organic market. And I would really ask that you make it happen to put that explicitly in front of those people that are looking for those opportunities. Thank you.
It's a good suggestion. Our Beginning Farm and Rancher program actually funnels money through folks who are successful in applying for these resources. Oftentimes, they're land-grant universities or nonprofit organizations, and they come to us with recommendations as to how they're going to go about getting the word out to beginning farmers. But I think what we may not be able to exactly mandate that, but we certainly could make that a criteria for consideration in which applications should be successfully funded, number one. Number two, I do think it is important for us to create that transition program that I talked about, because that beginning farmer may not be able to access land that is immediately ready and able to produce organic. As you know, it may require some changes in the way in which the land is being used. So I think there has to be, that program has to be there to make it to make it real for beginning farmers. You know, I think that we also need to be aggressive in our promotion of these ideas within our land-grant university systems. And you know, there's many different ways to access land-grant university systems, and you know, I think that most of them are governed by boards. I know in my home state, it's the Board of Regents. An opportunity to actually make a case to the Board of Regents. I think that there needs to be an education process so that that's seen on the land-grant university campus in the same way that I think we now see it at USDA, which is that this is not some, you know, nice fluffy thing that we want to talk about. This is a real business, right? This is an opportunity. This is the entryway for small and medium-sized operators to get started or to stay on the land and to create greater diversity within agriculture. I tasked my senior staff the other day to try to define in less than 3 words what this administration has done at the Department of Agriculture. And the first word I would use is diversity. I think we have been supportive of diversity. Production, size, method of production, crops, people, workers. I think we've really tried to focus on that. And I think the second word would be collaboration. It's not always worked, but it has created a conversation that I think is sort of elevated the conversation to where it was, and I think it's a more productive conversation. And the last word I would probably use is based on something I read today. This is going to sound crazy, but the manager of the Pirate baseball team that I follow puts out an email every day. And somehow I got on the email list. And today, every Wednesday, he talks about John Wooden, who used to be a coach of the UCLA basketball team. And every Wednesday, it's Wooden's Wednesday, and today it was about balance. And I think what we haven't had, but what we're working towards in agriculture is a balanced system. And your point is well taken, that young people have to understand what the options are. That's why I also think it's important for us to figure out ways in which the comfort level of producers, young producers going into an FSA office at the county is increased, because there are programs that can help them get started, continue, expand. But they may feel like, well, that's not an office that's for me, it's an office for the guy who owns 5,000 acres down the road. No, it's an office for everybody, anybody that's in agriculture. It's one of the reasons why, as well, we haven't said, you know, this is just a rural issue here. We think this is an urban issue. So we just put out an urban farming toolkit that lays out in great detail. If you wanted to start an urban farm, regardless of size, here are the things you need to think about. Here are over 70 federal programs that you could potentially access to assist you in setting up that urban farm. We want people to think of this thing more broadly. So your point's well taken, and Betsy's taken a note on it, and I think it's a valid point, and I think it ought to be part of the consideration and where and who gets those resources.
So unfortunately, we've been told that the secretary has run out of time.
I tell you, I'm sorry. I don't know what I'm doing next, but don't worry about that. Let me tell you, this young man is very interested in asking a question, and this fellow over here. So I'll take 2 more questions. We'll get you. Whoever gets the microphone first, all right? You got it first.
Mr. Secretary, first, I want to make sure that you know how much we value what you have done for us, what you've done for agriculture in general, and your wisdom. Thank you. Since you've already answered my first question, which is annual, as you know, the second point is 2. In looking at this big picture with the Farm Bill coming down, and knowing that we still have a large amount of poverty in this country, how do we put those 2 things together and really looking forward to we can truly make a difference and meet some of the objectives you lay out?
Well, I really appreciate the fact that you've included in the question the poverty issue, because it is one that I've tried to elevate, particularly in rural areas. There's a tendency, I think, for some folks here to think of poverty as an urban issue. But it is actually a fairly serious rural issue. 85% of the persistently poor counties in this country are rural. 1 out of 5 American children lives in poverty, but 1 out of 4 rural American children live in poverty. So it is a serious issue, right? So we, the President created the Rural Council, which I chair, and it's the first effort ever to sort of integrate everything that the federal government does to try to make sure that we start to address these problems. And we have a whole host of things that we've attempted to do on the rural economy. And 2 of them, one is local food, local places, an effort to really incorporate in the mentality of HHS and the Department of Transportation and Department of HUD, this concept of agriculture as a way of addressing poverty, as a way of improving communities, rural and urban. And we've now funded over 50 projects in rural areas that sort of support this local food effort because they see that as a way. We've also done this on the biofuel piece. We've worked with the Department of Defense to create an industry that hasn't existed before in the U.S., which is a drop-in aviation and marine fuel, and that's also going to create opportunities. Recently, we focused on the poverty side of this, and the first effort is to make sure people access the programs that are available, and to make sure that they're integrated and coordinated in a way that makes the most sense. What I referred to earlier as the sort of the 4 pillars, the production, agriculture, and exports, local and regional food systems, conservation, and bio-based, that's the formula that over time will improve opportunities in rural areas. The local and regional food system, and within that, but not exclusive, organic is included, is a terrific opportunity because the problem with the system as was 6-7 years ago is if you were a young person wanting to get into farming, you were going to get most likely into a commodity-based system. Well, if you're in a commodity-based system, you get whatever the Chicago Board of Trade or whoever decides on a particular day the world market is. Well, good luck with that because that's all about size, it's all about efficiency, it's all about, it's a commodity, right? And so you're going to get the lowest possible price that the market will bear. And if you have a glut, if you have an oversurplus, if something happens in a country, your fate is tied to a lot of activity that you have no control over. So you want to be a small, mid-sized guy, you have to be able to be in a position where you can negotiate a price that you believe is fair and one that your customer is willing to pay, that potentially provides a value-added proposition that allows you to stay in business and stay small or stay medium. Well, that's what we tried to do. We tried to create that other market, and it's growing. The organic market is growing. So is the local and regional food system market. It's 162,000 producers today who are selling something directly to a consumer or selling it to a restaurant or a grocery store that sells it to the consumer. It is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and we have seen phenomenal growth in that industry in the last 5 or 6 years. It needs to continue. It needs to accelerate. So that's why we have created these value chain coordinators. That's why we have the Farm to School program, maybe the best $5 to $6 million we spend, getting folks to think about where their food comes from, making sure kids understand where it comes from, value the people that produce it. So in the conservation stuff, I think with the Paris Agreement is going to take off, and certainly the bio-based economy. So that's going to bring manufacturing back. So you really have the total package. This is such an important question because the reality is because we haven't had that for so long, because we just focused on efficiency and bigness, we've seen a phenomenal change in rural areas. I tell the statistic now, which I think is a remarkable. When I was born, from the time I've been on this earth, agricultural production in the United States has increased 170%, on 26% less land and with 22 million fewer farmers. When I was born, I think our population was something like 100, 150 million people. We've doubled since then. But when you had 25 million families engaged in farming, that meant you had a significant percentage of America's population engaged in farming. And you had probably the other 75% of the country, 1 generation, maybe 2 generations removed from the farm. So there was a real understanding, a real appreciation, a feeling about agriculture. But it was all efficiency, 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 and important. But 22 million fewer folks in that business. We didn't think about, well, what are we going to do with these people? Well, we said, go to the city. Well, we should have said, hey, you can go to the city. That's an option. But here's what we're also going to do. We're going to have that local and regional food system. We're going to have the organic. We're going to give you a manufacturing, small scale. So you have options. If you want to raise your kids in a small town, you still have that chance to do that. We're trying to do that now. Well, better late than never. And if we do, then we're going to have better incomes, better jobs. Your report reflects that. And you're going to begin to give people options. And here's what's going to happen. A lot of the kids who move to the city, they say, you know, I really don't want to live here. I want to come back to that small town. I want to be a leader in that small town. I want to make things happen. You know, I'll have to be in this town for 20 years before I make something. I go to a small town, I can make it happen next year. And over time, you're going to see better incomes. You're going to see stronger support for the social services. The biggest mistake that rural America makes is they hang on to tax-supported institutions as an identification of their community, the school, the hospital. They need tax-paying institutions because they will support the tax-supported institutions. So our job at USDA is to try to educate in the Farm Bill that this strategy is working, that they need to invest in it. They just don't need to invest in one aspect of it, production, agriculture, and trade. They need to invest in all four aspects of it. This Farm Bill in 2014 did that. We need to make sure that it happens and that they step it up. Last point, in order to do that, we cannot start this Farm Bill debate in 2018 with this following question. How much money are we going to save when we write this bill? Because that's what happened last time. They started with, well, we have to save $23 billion. How do we do that? Well, as soon as you start with that question, everything else gets constrained. The research, the support for beginning farmers, the local and regional food systems, the bio-based economy, rural development, the nutrition, they all get squeezed. It's better to say, what's the need? Are we willing to accept as a nation that 1 out of every 4 kids living in rural America is going to live in poverty? Are we willing to accept the proposition that because of that, these kids will think their tomorrow's no better than their today, and they'll either leave or they'll stay and they'll get in what we're dealing with now, which is an opioid and heroin addiction? Why would we be willing to do that? Shouldn't we start with the proposition that this is an important place and we need to invest in it? Now, you know, we obviously don't have unlimited resources, but when you start with how do I save $23 billion, you end up shortchanging a lot of good things. And it's amazing that we got the bill we got, but we got one, and we're making the case we need to have future administrations continue it, in my view, and we need to have future ag secretaries understand their portfolio is much broader and much more diverse than I think folks thought of this department 8 years ago. Sir?
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. In the interest of full disclosure, I just want to say that you have my dream job.
Hey, it's going to be open in about 6 months, man.
Well, if you know anybody, by way of introduction, my wife and I are Organic Valley farmers. We farm in Wisconsin, but we're about 15 minutes outside of Dubuque, Iowa, so we're basically neighbors. We're dairy farmers. We started farming about 10 years ago, and my fear is this, and my question is my fear misguided? We wouldn't be farming if it wasn't for Organic Valley and if it wasn't for this organic sector that you guys have all worked so hard to create. It's very difficult to farm if you're young. It's very expensive. We offered $11,000 an acre for a farm last year and we didn't get it. As you know right now, the conventional milk price is so low. My fear is that as people that haven't worked hard to create this industry start to realize that, hey, we have something going here. And as your study indicated, I truly believe we do. I've seen it on my own farm. I've seen it in my own county, in my own state. It's amazing what organic agriculture has done for rural America. Is my fear misguided that some of these people that are in large production agriculture are going to try to take advantage of that and come in and ruin a market that we've worked so hard to create? And is USDA concerned about that? And are you doing something to protect it? Because as you said, generations ago, when you looked at farms, you had farms that had 50 sows, they had chickens, they had cows. Now those industries have matured and those farms are gone. And the only thing that's left is we have some smaller size production conventional dairies, but we also have a lot of smaller organic dairies. And if that goes away, then all of our past is eroded too. And I guess my question is just, one, is my fear misguided? And two, you obviously understand what's going on and you get it, which I really appreciate. I just would be interested in hearing your comments, and thank you for staying and taking questions. I mean, how great is it that in this country, the greatest country in the world, a farmer like me can spend 20 hours a day in a tractor and then fly to Washington, D.C. and speak to the United States Agriculture Secretary. So thank you.
Let me see if I can try to respond. First of all, I'm optimistic about the future. So I'm not willing to share the premise that some are articulating that, our best days are behind us and, woe is us. I'm just not willing to accept that. And the reason I'm not is because I travel around the country and I see the incredible innovation that's taking place and the incredible entrepreneurship that local and regional food systems, for example, organic, is creating. It's creating energy, it's creating entrepreneurship, it's innovation, it's young people being attracted back to the rural areas. I think it's great, and we obviously need to continue, and I think it will continue. I think there's going to be, the fact that this market generally, the organic market, is growing at 15% annually, I don't know whether it's possible over time for that significant growth rate to continue, but I'm pretty sure in the short term it's going to continue because there is just incredible interest in this. And it's not just the high-value grocery stores anymore that cater to a narrow band of consumers that can afford to pay a little bit more. It's more mainstream than that, and it's reflected in the fact that you're selling product in Walmart, you're selling product in Target, you're selling product in Costco, and you're selling product at Giant and Safeway and all of the chain stores. Number one. Number two, you're seeing a profound impact in expansion of farmers markets. Not only are people interested in buying organic, but they're also interested in knowing who their farmer is. And that's why they love going to a farmer's market. My wife and I will be moving back to Iowa, and Des Moines got a farmer's market. Shoot, 20,000 people show up on a Saturday. It's an amazing thing. And 20,000 people in Des Moines is a lot of people, right? It's a lot of folks. But what's the attraction? Well, the attraction is not just good food, it's the ability to talk to the farmer. It's the ability to have a relationship. And I think people want that. I think people are starved for that. In this day and age where everything is so electronic, with due respect to young folks, Facebook is great, but, I like walking down, getting bumped every once in a while by somebody. You run into a neighbor, you run into somebody you haven't seen for a while, you pick up the family, information about what's happening to your kids, where are they, what's going on. You get a sense of connection. And I think we want that in this country, and we need it. So I think that's going to continue to drive interest in farmers markets. I think schools, it's a no-brainer for a superintendent of a school, even with tight budgets, to say to their nutrition folks, hey, can we buy from the local folks? If I'm a superintendent and I got a popularly elected school board that decides my fate, to the extent that I can make sure that every dollar that I spend in that school district stays in the district, rolls around a couple of times in the district, helps to create jobs in the district, helps to create supply, why wouldn't I do that? Even if I have to pay a few pennies more, because it's going to help me in the long run. It's going to help me get bond issues passed. It's going to help me get teachers there that feel connected to the community and stay. It's just going to reward itself. So optimistic. Now, look, the dairy industry, God bless you for being in that industry. Here's what I don't understand about you guys. It's like, you think the only person who's kind of watching the market is you and your neighbor's not, so you think, well, I'll just increase supply a little bit more. My neighbor's not smart enough to do that, so the high prices will stay, and I'll get the benefit. Well, the reality is you all increase supply, and you have more than enough, and the prices come down. So what we can do, and what we've tried to do, is create a process that says, in essence, when the differential between what you're paying and what you're getting gets to a certain point, we'll kick in. As a government, we want you to stay in business. We'll help. And if there's an oversupply, the government will come in at some point in time, as we do with so many other commodities. I can't tell you how many cranberries I've bought since I've been secretary. I bought $45 million of cranberries the other day. I was just like, what do we do with it? And grape juice? I mean, what do we do with all this? It goes to food banks, it goes to schools. So we'll end up doing that with dairy if we have to. So I think the key here is to make sure you've got expanded market opportunity, and I think that's both domestic, helping farmers markets, local foods, farm to school, continuing to fund all that so you have an expanded domestic market, and then the international market. The ability to, if you can't sell it in the U.S., maybe you sell it someplace else where there's a need for it, right? That's why we enter into these trade agreements. That's why we have these equivalency agreements, to make it a little bit easier. So maybe you can't sell it in Dubuque. Maybe you got to sell it to Ireland. Maybe you got to sell it to our friends in New Zealand. We need to sell more to those folks down there. They keep selling to us. Or maybe you need to do what this industry has done, which is to create new products. I mean, right now, Greek yogurt, a lot being sold, and now it's a protein substitute in schools for school meals, because kids would rather have that than maybe a meat product. So it's an alternative for a school. So the dairy industry has been incredibly innovative. And I'll finish with that. It's just been incredibly innovative at every level. It was the dairy industry that stepped up in 2009 and said, you know what, we got to get serious about greenhouse gas emissions. We have to reduce them. As a supply chain, we got to figure out how to reduce this, because otherwise people are going to come in and regulate us. So we're going to be proactive. So they're working with us at USDA to create digesters, capture the methane, convert it into the power to fuel the dairy operation. You save money, you reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and you have the industry as a leader in this effort that shows an example to all of agriculture. So I'm just maybe an eternal optimist here, but, and this is the last remark here, there needs to be a process in which everyone in agriculture understands that before they begin talking about their particular method or production, they need to acquaint their customers, their consumers, their friends and neighbors about what it really means to farm. We need some kind of messaging about agriculture generally that is not so negative, because the reality is, when 25 million people farmed when I was born in 1950 and they had one generation removed, everybody thought farming was great because they were connected. Now less than 1% of America's population farms. And many of the other 99% have no idea. So here's the message that I share with people. I look around and I'll talk to an audience, say, of economic development. I'll say, how many people here farm? And one or two people raise their hand. And I'll say, the rest of you folks, do you realize how much you owe those people that farm? Because you were able to make a decision about your life without ever having to think about, well, how am I going to feed my family? Am I going to have to grow it? Am I going to have to raise it? Am I going to have to produce it? Where's it going to come from? You didn't even have to think about that. I was free just to think about law school. It never occurred to me in a million years that I'd actually have to produce the food to feed my family. That's not always been the case in this country. But because we have agriculture, extraordinary agriculture, incredibly productive, incredibly innovative, incredibly caring people, the rest of us are now free to go, you know what, I think I'll be a lawyer. I think I'll be a teacher. I think I'll be an engineer. I think I'll be a business owner. We're free to do that. That's the dynamism of this country. And it starts with agriculture. Now, take a look at every other place in the world today that's in conflict. All the dangerous places in the world today. There's one thing in common about those places. And it isn't the religion that they follow. It's that they don't have a functioning agricultural economy. They have high levels of unemployment and they got a lot of hungry people. Well, guess what? If you got hungry, unemployed folks, I don't care what the Constitution is, I don't care what the Declaration of Independence is in your country, you're going to have trouble. We have less of that here because we have food assistance programs that are important to the stability of this country. We have a farming population that is incredibly innovative, incredibly productive, and now, with all of you, amazingly entrepreneurial. And that helps to maintain this economy that frees us up, the rest of us, to do what we're God-given talents. God forbid my family would have to rely on what I could grow. And we do it in a way, somehow, that allows us to walk out of grocery stores with a little more money in our pocket than most other people. So that frees us up to buy a bunch of other stuff that creates jobs in this economy. It is one amazing process, and it doesn't get anywhere near the credit it deserves. So I think the challenge I would give to you is celebrate the fact that you're a farmer. Not just that you're an organic farmer, just that you're a farmer. And make sure that your friends and neighbors who aren't understand the reason they are whatever it is they are is because there are people like you in this country doing it every single day. Thank you all very much.